Hey, welcome back to the Watchman's Post. Today we're doing a movie review. We're going to be reviewing Kingdom of Heaven from 2005, directed by Ridley Scott. With me, I have a special guest. He's also from my bloodline, my younger brother, Zach. Thanks for joining us. Zach has his own YouTube channel. What's it called again?
Wyvern, Wyvern. Thinking of changing the name because it's pretty bad.
It's pretty weird. It's like a dragon thing.
Do you remember what the original name of that was?
Twisted Scope?
Yep.
Yeah, it used to be Twisted Scope. Now it's Wyvern, which is, substituted weird for weird, so. But it's a good channel. He's got some good content over there. If you're interested in like UFC stuff, he does some movie reviews. That's kind of where we got this idea from. So we're gonna jump right into it. Kingdom of Heaven. Well, do you have a brief summary of the movie, or can you give us a brief synopsis of kind of like what's going on there?
So basically, it's based on the takeover of Jerusalem from Muslims. They took it over with, how do you say his name? Saladin.
We're just gonna call him
Saladin.
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 Saladin. I don't know.
During the, I believe, Third Crusade.
Yeah, I think it's right at the end of the third is I think where it takes place.
So yeah, basically it's during Saladin, they take it over, and the whole premise of it is basically Balian, played by Orlando Bloom in this movie. Basically, the entire thing is his origin story and how he has to defend it without the Templars, and it actually is very impressive. I studied the story after watching the movie because I never knew about it, and it was actually kind of really cool.
Oh yeah, the real story, like if he just would have went with the real story, it would have been better than the movie. The movie's great, but the real story, like if he just would have stayed true to the history, that in and of itself is an amazing story. Him alongside in the movie, it's kind of him by himself, but in reality, there's a couple other knights with him, and they rally up these peasants who aren't knights, and they defend Jerusalem for I think it was a couple weeks.
Yeah.
In the movie it's like a day or two, but it's a couple weeks.
From September, it was like September 20th to like October 13th.
Yeah,
or
so this
somewhere around there.
Yeah, this group of non-experienced knights and this city full of peasants and whatever from all backgrounds defend the city for a couple weeks. So that's pretty much the synopsis.
Yeah,
He starts as a blacksmith in the movie, meets his dad, played by Liam Neeson, Godfrey, and he kind of goes on this journey of redemption because his wife. Oh yeah, by the way, spoiler alert! If you haven't seen the movie, we're gonna spoil it. But yeah, so his wife commits suicide. I think they lose their son. His wife commits suicide, and the Catholic priest, they cut her head off, and Balian ends up killing the priest after he finds out that they butchered her dead body because it was a sin to commit suicide. And so he kills someone, gets all down in the dumps, he's seeking redemption, and everyone's telling him, hey, go to Jerusalem, go to the holy place, you'll find God there, redemption is there, forgiveness of your sins, all that stuff. So he makes it a point to travel with his father, who he literally just finds out in the beginning, like he just finds out that that's his dad.
Who he wanted absolutely nothing to do with.
Yeah. His dad basically was like, yep, you're my son, and I wanted nothing to do with you. And so they travel together for a little bit. His dad teaches him a few things about being a knight and all that stuff, gives him a little swordsmith lesson. Then he gets to then his dad dies.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, kind of just out of the blue. Like he just gets shot with an arrow.
I get why they did it though. It was literally just to give Orlando Bloom's character Balian a purpose. Like he had no purpose at the beginning. Like when the dude was slapping him in the beginning, like he didn't care. Like he showed no emotion at all. And then once Godfrey came into his life, he kind of had a purpose that he wanted to re-resurrect his soul.
Yeah. So he gets to Jerusalem, meets these guys. Because his name he's Liam Neeson's character's son, he has some nobility, and so he's granted this place to live, this 13-acre plot of land with people working for him, and so he kind of does that for a while while at the same time the Templars are raiding Muslim caravans and breaking the truce between the Christians and the Muslims. And eventually, one of the villains of the movie, Reynolds, I
Yeah.
guess he's a crusader. He captures, and it's implied that he does some not nice things to Saladin's sister, and that's what prompts him to invade Jerusalem. And so, yeah, then he invades Jerusalem, and Orlando Bloom and his merry men are able to hold it off just long enough that they can broker a peace treaty, and they're allowed to leave, but they have to surrender the city to the Muslims. And that's pretty much the movie. So,
Summed up into 3 hours, though.
oh yeah, it's a 3-hour movie, so we definitely missed some stuff. But we're going to jump right into the strengths and weaknesses of the film. And so I'll just start here with my... I have 5. I don't know how many you have, but I'll just start with mine, and we can kind of play off each other a
mine
little
are
bit.
kind of all over the place.
Yeah. So, strong. I'll grant it. It has strong themes. The storytelling is thoughtful, even though it's historically inaccurate and pretty anti-religion,
Yeah.
with a very, very strong anti-Catholic, anti-Christian bias. You can tell. Besides that, I will say, regardless of whether or not I agree with the message, there was some thought put into the story, and the theme and the way he tells the story is interesting. So that's a strong point for me. It explores, really complex things like religious tolerance, honor, redemption, fanaticism. He kind of steers away from the whole good versus evil. There's honorable things about characters and there's dishonorable things about characters. Orlando Bloom, for example, the main character, the movie starts off, he murders somebody, and so he commits adultery with a lady, so it's there's no like black and white, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, and so that's respectable. Which again, in most historical narratives like this, you're going to see it's, these guys are clearly the bad guys, they're doing terrible stuff, and these are the honorable good guys who never do anything wrong, everything they do is righteous, so it definitely not that way at all in this film, and I actually think that's a strong point for it. And he does try to nuance the conflicts at the mercy of being true to history, but I would say that's a strong point for me, is the storytelling in and of itself.
Yeah.
So what do you have?
So I never knew any of the history behind the Crusades or during this battle, so I kind of had to go into it with an open mind, and I'd say that towards the beginning of the movie, it was honestly a little bit rough for me because a whole lot wasn't happening. I mean, it kind of just jumped out of nowhere where he got introduced to his father, and they were kind of just traveling to Jerusalem, and I don't know, it took like probably an hour for me to actually get enjoyment through it. So I feel like the timing and like the speed of the
So you
entire
didn't
movie.
so the first hour, there's not much at all that you liked about it.
I like the twist of Godfrey being the father, but it's like they just met each other, so it wasn't really much of a twist, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like they should have saved that towards like right when he was about to die.
Yeah.
But
So maybe if they would have held off killing him and he, maybe get to Jerusalem, works with him for a while, and
Yeah.
then maybe he dies in battle or something. I don't know.
and
But again,
like if I'm mistaken, was Godfrey was he even an actual person in the Crusades?
that's a good question.
Because
Probably,
if okay,
but
I was
he
gonna
wasn't
say-
his dad in real
No.
in real life. No,
which
in real
that's
life, yeah,
my biggest weakness.
yeah.
Probably,
We'll get to that.
towards the end.
Next, for me, this is something that I know we'll both agree on. It's visually stunning. Like some of the coolest.
We might disagree on that one.
Before we started this episode, you just
Hold on. Okay, here's what I will say. At the very beginning of the movie, I was like, for a $130 million budget on a 2005 movie, these visuals look awful. Now, towards the end, once they got to Jerusalem, they must have put all their budget in once they got to
In the
Jerusalem.
second half of the movie.
Because they must have spent like not even half of it in the first half, because I thought it looks horrible.
Really?
Name one good scene.
I like the whole part where they're in the woods.
Like when they're in his hometown at the very beginning, there's nothing.
Oh yeah,
there's nothing stunning.
Yeah, you don't see anything there. Okay. For me, I think the movie's visually stunning. Some of the coolest battle sequences, and just there's a scene shortly after I think it's the Battle of Carrick, when Orlando Bloom's group of like 50 knights defend the Muslim army. They kind of get butchered, but they hold off the army just long enough that the king and his army can show up. And after Orlando Bloom's character gets captured, he's talking and everything, and the Muslim guy, he kind of just looks over, and in the distance all you see is this golden cross come up over the hill, and the Muslim guy looks and he's like, tell our king that Jerusalem has come.
That was the best.
And you see
movie.
the music picks up, and you see this cross, and then the Jerusalem army comes up, and I'm like, that is one of the coolest scenes I've ever seen in a movie. The hype around that scene was awesome, and the fear, because at this point King Baldwin was still alive, and in they actually mentioned this a lot in the movie. When King Baldwin was 16 years old, he demolished Saladin and his army multiple times, like almost killed him a couple times. So he feared King Baldwin. And so when he arrives on the battlefield with his army, like it is
cool.
Such an awesome scene. And the music, again, I'll go into the music. It was a great soundtrack.
Yeah, they used music perfectly, like for each situation. Like when an army would arrive somewhere, or like when they'd arrive into a new town, like they used it perfectly, and it fit the theme of the setting very well.
And the battles were well choreographed too. Like there were scenes where after they're in conflict, they would come back to them, and they'd all be like laying on the ground, hunched over their sword, just exhausted, because that's what, I mean, you're wearing armor, swinging a sword around or an axe, like it's exhausting. So they really, it's fairly accurate, and the battles, it's brutal. Like it's a bloody movie. So he doesn't shy away from the realistic portrayal of the medieval combat. So I love that.
Well, I think the really cool thing about it was, like you said, the choreography and like how they did the fighting was good.
Mm-hmm.
It reminded me exactly of Lord of the Rings, which Return of the King, when they're attacking Minas Tirith. Like, it's so funny because that's exactly how Minas Tirith was, except for obviously the Rohan coming in at the end.
Yeah.
But like them attacking the city, it's like, holy crap! It feels like I'm just watching Lord of the Rings.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's true. Like they spend the whole first day and a half or 2 days just bombarding the city with catapults and just shooting stuff over the walls, and yeah, I guess that does, yeah. And
like then they send the battering ram to try and batter down the door.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't even think about that.
I was thinking that the entire time I was watching it. I was like, all right, I can deal with this.
Yeah.
But the biggest weakness for me is just consistency. I mean, you can't.
I'm still on strengths. You're moving on to weaknesses now?
Well, that's like a big thing.
Our scores are not going to match, I don't think.
No, they are not. But
let me get through.
All
right, let me get through. Oh, okay. What's a strength for you before we move on to weaknesses?
Now, you're going to disagree with me on this, though, because I'm pretty sure this is one of your weaknesses. I do think Orlando Bloom did play an amazing role. Obviously, in 2005, he was coming off of 2 amazing franchise movies in Pirates of the Caribbean and Lord of the Rings. But I think he played it well. Me and Seth talked about it after the movie. We said that Russell Crowe would probably be a better pick.
You could tell it was written for a Russell Crowe type character. And it's, I don't know, Orlando Bloom, it's probably his best role. I mean, besides like Lord of the Rings and Pirates of the Caribbean, like everything
as
after
a main
that,
role, I'd say it's his
I think
best one.
he carried the film. He did good, but he's not like, he doesn't give me Aragorn. Like this character needed like Aragorn vibes. You know what I mean?
There's only one Aragorn.
Yeah, I know, but like,
and unfortunately, he only has like 2 good movies.
Yeah, I guess. And I'll say, like, the way they portray Saladin, his character, or Saladin, I forget how you pronounce his name, to be honest with you.
Saladin.
We'll say Saladin. He's depicted as like this wise, honorable leader. So it's kind of cool that, like, I guess from our point of view, they're the villains, but from the movie's point of view, he's the hero, I guess. or one of the heroes. Maybe there is no hero in the movie. I don't even know, to be honest. But
Yeah, I don't think you can pick a hero.
yeah, there's really, but he's clearly portrayed as higher than everyone else in the
Yeah.
movie, like more honorable, more disciplined. So whether that's historic, like it's not accurate, but for a movie though, that type of character is interesting. The conversations he has with the king of Jerusalem and then Balian later on after the king dies, like he's a really cool character. So I do think that's a strong point. I do knock some points off because it's not at all how he was.
I cannot.
He was a good leader. You don't, a good military leader. Don't give me that. But he's not. He wasn't this merciful. There's a scene at the end of the movie where when they get into the
puts the cross on the.
Yeah, there's a big cross laying on the ground. And he bends over and picks it up and sets it real nicely on the table. That's not at all what happened. What he does is he puts the cross on the back of a horse and they drag it through the city, desecrating it. Like that's what actually happened. But in the movie, he's like, oh, remember when they walk into the castle at the end and there's a big cross on the floor and he looks at it and like tiptoes around the side of it? Like not at all what happened. So other than that, he's a cool character. Even though it's not accurate to who he was really.
Am I allowed to bring my conspiracy into why they portrayed him as a good guy?
No. We'll do that later.
Come on.
When we get into the theme. That plays more into the theme though, right? Yeah, it does.
Into why this is the theme, yeah, I guess it does.
Yeah. So I want to get into that. And then I'm going to... You never saw the theatrical version?
I did not.
So we watched the director's cut, which adds about 45 extra minutes. That drastically changes the quality of this movie. In the first version, a lot of things happen and it skips around and you're just like, where am I? And it's just like it seems just like kind of like a cheap action movie. The director's cut really draws out like the political stuff, the drama, and some of the backstories to these characters that make the second half of the movie like, oh, that's why Sibylla's doing this. That's why Balian's so intent on defending Jerusalem, because so Balian's backstory and his relationship with his wife really wasn't addressed too much in the theatrical version. Sibylla's arc with her son, who after King Baldwin dies, Sibylla's young son, I don't know how, 13 years old maybe, he gets he becomes king. But it comes later to find out that he has leprosy, just like the previous king who had just died at like 20-something years old.
Yeah. And
so she had just lost her brother to leprosy, and now she finds out her son, who has just become king, has leprosy. And so she decides to put him, she spares him in her view, and she poisons him and kills him. And that really makes the movie make a lot of sense as to why she does what she does at the end of the movie, because that wasn't even in the theater. So she's doing all this stuff at the end. We're like, what? Like, this is kind of out of nowhere. But now seeing what she did, it makes that make more sense. There's just a lot more depth to the movie out of the director's cut, I think. So it makes it more engaging. But that's pretty much all I have for strengths. We can get into some weaknesses here, and then we'll give our verdict. But go ahead.
Okay. I only really have maybe two big weaknesses. And obviously I kind of mentioned the first weakness already, and that's consistency. I mean, personally, to have a good movie, you need to have consistency and enjoyment throughout the entire movie. I just didn't have that. I feel like they kind of started off slow, and that's why I only enjoyed really the second half of the movie, so the last hour and a half. But consistency, that's the biggest one for me. I mean, you need that in a movie, obviously. And then the second one is... the only really good action scenes was when everyone was hunched up together. I know some people believe that you don't need good action for a good movie, but when it's a movie based on a battle, I feel like you need good action. And I don't know, when Godfrey taught Balian how to fight and those soldiers came in and they started fighting them, those action scenes were...
They get about 5 minutes of training in, and then all of a sudden arrows start flying everywhere and like the whole squad's dead. And you're just like, okay.
But
that's
I don't know. It was, that whole scene just felt poorly budgeted, and I just feel like that's how they kind of went in this movie. It's like, spend no money at the beginning, use it all at the end, everyone will be fine with it. So I wonder if I would like the shorter version better.
I was thinking that maybe
because they probably get to Jerusalem a lot quicker. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'd like the shorter version
maybe
better.
you will. I'd be interested to see that. I'd be fine to watch it again. I don't hate this movie by any means. Like,
maybe.
is this movie worth watching in 2025? Absolutely. Like, if you haven't seen it, watch it.
I can agree with that.
Like, watch it. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a bad movie by any means. I mean, we already briefly touched on this, but like a big glaring weakness is just how historically inaccurate it is. Like, for example, the main character is a real person, but in the movie he's a poor blacksmith. In real life he was a lot older, and he was a nobleman with political experience. He wasn't some blacksmith who becomes a knight. Like, a completely different story. Balian and the queen, or the king's sister, I guess. She becomes the queen later.
Yeah.
They have a romance. So she's married and she commits adultery with the main character. That's not true. She remained faithful to her husband, Guy. But as Americans, we're going to call him Guy.
Okay. We can call him Guy. That's fine.
And then, the siege of Jerusalem's not very accurate either. The movie makes it seem like Balian's like the only defender. Everyone else is just kind of like, what do I do? Tell me what to do, Balian. And
He was killing like everyone.
Yeah,
no one else was doing anything
Yeah, I know.
else.
He's like jumping from wall to wall, taking care of everything. But historically, there were other documented leaders involved with this as well. It wasn't just him. Another glaring thing, and I'm biased because I'm a Christian, the Crusaders are viewed as the villains of this movie. And either way, just putting religion and stuff aside, the villains themselves are completely one-dimensional. Like, there's nothing else to them. They're just these bloodthirsty barbarians who they're not smart. They're portrayed as these dumb, not like, these guys were great leaders. Like, some of them, like Guy, he was a little rough, but he was a good tactical military leader. Like, and Reynold, like, he was attacking some of the caravans and stuff, but he wasn't like this bloodthirsty psychopath. Like, in the movie, he gets put in jail and he's just walking in circles saying, I'm Reynold, and he, it's like, he's just this weirdo. Like, the bad guys are just weird psycho Christians, and they're walking around being like, God wills it, and I don't know. It was just a horrible portrayal of like, just as a villain. Like, they weren't good villain. Like, at least make them good. Like, give them some depth and stuff. But none of that. They're just these weird.
Same with the priest.
Well, yeah, and then the priests, obviously, there's the Patriarch of Jerusalem at the end, who tries to convince the main character. Well, this will get into the theme a little bit, but the Patriarch of Jerusalem, who's supposed to be like the religious leader and like the spiritual father of that place, completely abandons the people and tries to convince the main character to, well, we can just sneak out the back. I can get us horses and we can sneak out the side passageway. And, and Balian's like, well, what about the people? And he's like, oh, God will take care of it. It's fine. And it's just like all the religious leaders are portrayed as these horrible, just evil. It's almost like cartoonishly evil. Like, he went out of his way to make Christians be like the worst. I don't know.
He even made the guy, literally, the priest even said, like, we can change our religion and then go back to it. Remember, he said that towards the end.
Everyone convert to Islam and we'll repent later. It's like, what? So it was not even the way he portrays Christianity and Islam.
I would have cheered for the Muslims if I didn't have religion at this point, watching this movie.
Oh, yeah. Like, if you, probably. And then Sibylla's character, like, she's great and all, Eva Green, but she's very underdeveloped, even with the director's cut. Like, there's just no depth to her. And then Tiberius, you get Jeremy Irons, who's a fantastic actor at this point, well-seasoned, amazing actor, who's amazing the entire movie.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, when, like, the climax is about to happen, he just goes,
just
see
leaves.
ya. And he just leaves. He's like, you'll have to do this without my knights. And then he just runs away.
With no reason to
leave
whatsoever.
We never see him again. He's like, he's fighting for the king the whole time. He's defending the king. He's like helping the king find a successor and a leader of the army of Jerusalem. And then he just dips out. So that was kind of weird. which I think goes into some of the pacing issues you were talking about as well. So we rambled a lot. Let's move into our final verdict.
Okay.
Despite the historical liberties, the many historical liberties that this film takes, and some very uneven character development, the movie is visually stunning. It is. Yes, it is. It is thematically rich. Whether we agree with it or not, it is thematically rich. And the director's cut, in my view, significantly improves it. There's not many of these made, so we have to say that it is one of the better medieval epics ever made.
Yeah.
Orlando Bloom's performance is somewhat divisive. I'll side with you. I think
mostly good.
I think he did a good job.
I do get what you mean, though.
You're gonna hold a gun to my head. I'm gonna say he did good.
When you talk about his speeches towards the end, I can see what you mean.
Well, yeah,
his speeches weren't that good towards the end.
No,
but Russell Crowe would be perfect for that.
Oh, absolutely. The supporting cast is pretty good. The epic, the scale's epic. The scene, it's just everything's massive about this movie. So that kind of makes it kind of a standout movie in its own way. We're gonna rate it, give it a 1 to 10 here. What do you rate this movie and why?
Okay, so
this is kind of Zach's specialty. This is the Wyvern.
This is my Wyvern specialty for my YouTube channel. I kind of have a rating system, and I gave it a 7.8 solely just because. And here's what I rated on. I rated on the acting. I gave it a 7.5 just because I feel like the main actors did a good job, but the side characters were kind of iffy. The dudes that just got one-liners, I didn't feel like their acting was that good. So that's why it's only got a 7.5. And like we said, Russell Crowe would have been a way better actor for the movie. Cinematography, again, it was only a 7.5 because the shots at the end were good, but the shots towards the beginning were not. So that's kind of an average rating for me. My enjoyment, 7.5 again, just because it's kind of average for me. So it's kind of an average movie when I come out to it, but my overall rating, I did give it a 7.8. I don't know if yours is... I'm guessing yours is going to be higher because you had more strengths than weaknesses, but 7.8. So for me, a good movie that I will rewatch by myself would be an 8. So it's probably a movie I won't watch on my own, but if someone came up to me and told me if they wanted to watch it, I'd probably watch it with them.
That's pretty much how I feel too. It's not one that I'm if I watch Gladiator, I'm oh man, I can't wait till I watch that again. This is not one of those movies, but it's worth watching. And if someone hasn't seen it, I can sit down and watch it with someone. I'm not gonna be oh, I hate this movie, So 7.8.
Please don't talk. If yours is
my original rating was a 7.5.
Okay, then ours might not be.
And
I
think I'm dropping it to a 7.
Whoa, you dropped it lower than mine?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I guess yours was already
I'm
lower,
putting it at a 7.
Well, how's your rating system?
Don't have one. I'm putting it at a 7.
7?
At a
so
7.
It's worse than the original?
The original for me was a 6.5 or something.
Jeez.
I genuinely don't remember liking the original that much.
Is that because of the historical inaccuracy?
That's
or is that
a big part of it. And personally, I wish they would have spent more time on the battle. The whole point of the movie is he defends Jerusalem. Yeah. I wish there would have been more time given to that. Like you said, not only did they kind of cheap out on some of the introduction stuff, they probably could have got rid of that whole thing and get him to Jerusalem earlier.
They could have started him in Jerusalem.
Get him to, whatever.
He started there anyway.
Sure. Get him to Jerusalem earlier in the movie. Build that stuff up. Spend more time, building the tension between Muslims and Christians. And then an epic 2-hour sequence where he's helping to defend Jerusalem. Because the whole thing, they know they're going to lose.
Yeah.
When push comes to shove and they're okay, we're doing this. All the knights are gone. And so he gets everyone in the patriarch's you have no knights. And so he tells everyone to get down on their knees, and then he knights the entire city all at once. Kind of a cool scene, actually. Yeah. And then he's real with everyone. He's like, we're not gonna win. We just need to hold off long enough that they want to talk to us. Like, we need to frustrate them enough that we can get terms out of them. And so that's the whole goal. Like, there is no way that they win this battle. Like, that going in. Like, they have no shot, and they know that. You could have spent more time on that. It's just kind of like they hurl some stones at the wall for 2 days, then they break one of the wall sections down, they go in and they fight, and then it's like, all right, fine, they wave the white flag, and then they come out and talk, and the movie's over.
So then here's my question to you. So say this wasn't any part of history, so take out the historical inaccuracy, what would you give it then? If it's just based on
maybe a 7.5. It doesn't go higher than
really?
a 7.5. No.
I'm
keeping it I think it's a good set. Maybe whatever. 7.3. That is my final thing.
Sounds like you're not completely sure on what you want to give the movie.
7.3. Put it in stone.
That's fine with me because, like, with the historical inaccuracy,
that has to play a part in it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're making a movie based on a historical event using
like,
real people,
them killing Saladin's sister, like, that never happened. She was protected by Saladin when they started attacking the caravans and everything. Like, there's just so much about it. The person that Balian actually marries and had a relationship with was related to Sibylla, however you say her name, but
Sibylla. But you're doing good. You're doing
close. But it was like it was either her stepmother or her child. There was 2 different articles I saw that had who he was married to, so they got that wrong. Tiberius wasn't even an actual person in this time at all.
So there was no reason for him to leave. Well, I guess kind of if he wasn't there, but
they didn't have to kill Godfrey, most likely, but
true, he didn't even need to die probably.
No.
But anyways, there's our verdict.
Time for the conspiracy.
For those of you that want to dip out now, go ahead. You got our score. Probably how long, producer Cade, how long have we been going? 30.
Not bad.
30 minutes?
3 hours.
I'm sitting here like, man, we've gone an hour
I know.
already.
I thought we were already.
I was like, man,
mark.
people are they're so not interested anymore.
Well, they probably weren't.
We got another 30 minutes to talk about conspiracy theories.
We got
themes.
historical inaccuracy for the next 30 minutes.
Okay, let's go. But yes, if you wanted our review, there we go. He gives it a 7.8. I give it a 7.3. Is it worth watching? If you haven't seen it, watch it. I'm gonna recommend you watch the director's cut. Yeah. It's everywhere. Like, literally, he dropped it like a year later. So, and it kind of blew up. Like, the director's cut's kind of like a cult, has like a cult following now because it's just so much better than the theatrical version. So don't even bother with the theatrical version unless you've already seen the director's cut. But yeah, definitely worth watching. So check it out. Good movie. It makes, it kind of just, we'll just jump right into the theme. It kind of just follows the modern revisionist narrative of the Crusades. The Crusaders are portrayed as these vicious, violent, bloodthirsty people that just, went over to the Middle East and just started slaughtering Muslims out of the blue. That's not at all what happened. You got to go back a couple centuries. You got to go back further in history if you want to get the real picture. Jerusalem was a Christian area first. That whole area was Christian. The Muslims unified in Egypt. There are a couple other Persia. There were a couple other countries that joined armies as Muslims shortly after Muhammad died, and they started taking over these lands and
by force. By
force, raping, pillaging, all that stuff. And the church really didn't get involved until, it was a long time after that. It wasn't until the Muslims started attacking the Byzantines when what's his name? I have it down here somewhere. The Byzantine emperor.
I forget.
I lied. I don't even have it on here. No, the Byzantine emperor Alexios.
Yep.
He pleaded with the Pope, "Hey, we need help." And so then the Pope Urban II, he called for the First Crusade in 1095. But you go back to the 7th century, and that was when the Muslims and Persians started. The Sasanians, including Syria, Egypt, and Persia, started taking stuff over and started killing Christians well before Crusaders ever got involved. So, in the whole movie, again, the more I talk about the movie, the lower score I'm going to give it. Probably 7.3. the whole movie they're talking about how the whole premise is like the Christians have to tiptoe around Jerusalem because we killed the Muslim when we took this place, we killed all the Muslims and they're real mad at us. But it's like, no, the Muslims took it first. And then the Christians after the First Crusade, they came and took it back. They reclaimed it by this point in the movie. So the Christians had taken it back after the Muslims had taken it first. So, it's just it's mind-boggling how this is going to get into you have to clearly want to denounce religion and Christianity if you want to film this movie in the way that he did. Because Ridley's a smart guy.
Scott.
He's not stupid. Go into your conspiracy now because you have to have there's something at play here.
There must be a reason why you don't talk about the first two Crusades and the beginning of the Third Crusade and just start with when the Muslims take over Jerusalem.
As that's the starting point for him.
Yes.
But that modern times, that's where it starts for people. It's like, oh yeah, the Christians, they wanted Jerusalem back, so they called the Crusades and they went over and slaughtered all these Muslims. It's like, you've just go rewind a little bit further, please.
And that's a huge thing I had with the movie. They how most historical movies they'll talk about what happened before.
Mm-hmm.
They did not talk about it.
There's no intro, nothing.
Like they have a little backstory for like Balian. I think it's like his origin, but like they don't talk about the first two Crusades at all. So literally, people are just going into the movie with Balian, and they're thinking, "Oh, they're attacking Muslims." No, but
I mean they are.
Yes.
At this point,
it's
Christians are being killed by Muslims.
It's retaliation at this point.
I was just reclaiming what's theirs.
Yeah,
but we're gonna have a whole series about the Crusades coming out. We're gonna, we might do like, maybe we will. We'll do like Daryl Cooper style. I love that man, Daryl Cooper. If you watch this show, I know for a fact that you don't, but if you ever do,
will never see this show.
I love you. You are my favorite historian. We'll probably do kind of like what he does. We'll do one episode on the First Crusade, and it'll be like a 3-hour long episode or something. We'll do one for each of the Crusades. They're not all great. I'm not going to fanboy over all of them. The first two, I stand behind those wholeheartedly. Even some of the third one, but towards the end of the third one, things kind of get weird. And the Fourth Crusade's just not good at all. But that'll be its own, so that's kind of coming down the pipeline as well. But back to the movie.
Okay, so conspiracy time.
I don't even know what you're going to say. Like, I'm actually, because before we started the show, he mentioned he has a conspiracy. And so I thought I knew what it was. Apparently I don't. So I'm interested to hear. Like, what's your conspiracy?
Our boy Ridley Scott. Most of you probably don't know this. What religion do you think Ridley Scott is?
The atheist religion. Only because you told me. And
ding, ding.
Atheism is a religion. I will die on that hill.
Because I was questioning when I was asking that if that was a religion or not. So that's good to know.
They'll tell you no.
Well.
But they're wrong.
If Seth says it's wrong, then it's wrong.
Cade would probably agree with me on that. My producer Cade would probably agree with me on that one. He's shaking his head yes.
Good. I am not qualified to answer that question.
We're not either, but it's just common knowledge.
All right. Well,
You'll get there
common
one day.
sense. All right, but I'm going to ask you this question. It's pretty obvious, but do you think he's the reason why they didn't use historical accuracy? Or do you think
him by himself?
Yeah.
I keep bumping the mic.
Or
Sorry, people.
Do you think it's just because he wanted to do something kind of new with the story?
Definitely not that. No way. I think for sure it's too obvious that there is a clear anti-Christian bias, and this movie came out in 2005, and I think what I have to say does kind of play into it. We're in the heart of the Iraq War, and at this point, Muslims are being looked down on as this brutal, vicious people, and so we see like an explosion around this time of like pro-Muslim, pro-Islam works and books and everything being written out, and history starting to be revised as in more of a pro-Muslim lens. That was very popular around this time, and so I think that this just that was the popular thing to do, and that's kind of what he jumped on here. And critics will tell you that, oh yeah, they do a good job of portraying both sides equally. No, they do not. No. If you watch this movie, the Christians are the clear villains.
They're awful. Like the
They're-
first scene.
Yes. Yeah, the movie starts with a priest butchering some guy's wife and then just like nagging him about it. It's like, oh, your wife's in hell because she committed suicide. But they had strict rules to follow about suicide, so that wasn't like entirely inaccurate, but like they dwell on it so much, like it's over the top, like how horrible he is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's never one good. In every Christian that's portrayed as good in this movie is some secular humanist. Like, it's not about your religion. It's about what you do. Like, everything you do is what matters. Like, having integrity is how you find redemption.
And I forget the quote that Balian says, but he literally, like the main character literally
At the end
says
of
that,
in his speech,
at the very end.
Oh yeah, he's like, none of this is about God. It's about what you do as people. It's like completely anti-Christian, but that, like, anytime you get a Christian who's portrayed as good, that's the message you get from them in the movie. All the ones that talk about God, or I'm gonna go. Everyone that's like, oh, I need to go pray or whatever. Like, they're viewed as these just stupid, bloodthirsty, mindless, zombie type characters. So, and then the Muslims, they're viewed as like these honorable, disciplined, which I'll give them that. Like, those armies were well disciplined, that's for sure. Like, I forget which battle it is. We don't see it in the movie. You see the aftermath of it when Guy and Reynold go out to face them.
Also, historically inaccurate, Balian also was there with them.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
But either way, they go out and they get slaughtered. But that's true. That happened because they got outsmarted. The Muslims cut off their water supply and forced them to do all these long marches to get to the battle. And like, tactically speaking, like, Saladin was a good military leader.
Yeah.
But he was not an honorable, merciful person. No, absolutely not. Yeah, I forget where we were going with that.
That Ridley Scott's an atheist.
Oh yes, all that to say, Ridley Scott's an atheist.
Yeah, that's basically my. It's not a conspiracy. The conspiracy was just that he made this movie bad. That's the reason why. But he said in an interview that he's an atheist, so you can check some sources on that.
No, you can tell. But it is funny though. An atheist making a movie. Like, the whole point of the movie was, he was trying, like, if you ask him about this movie, he'll say, like, oh yeah, I was just trying to make organized religion is bad. Here's another strength to the movie. He really does portray the horrors of war pretty well.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what you're doing, like, even in the Old Testament, when God commands Israel to go out and slaughter, the pagans, like, that was not a pleasant experience for the Israelites. God told them that they're going to win. God grants them victory. It's still not a good experience, and it's still a horrific thing. And Ridley Scott he does do a good job of portraying that from both sides. Like, both kings are like devastated. There's a really cool scene actually towards the end of the movie after they're defending Jerusalem, where there's mass burials, and both of the leaders are looking at all the men they've lost, and they kind of they're broken over it. And that's a reality, that war is disgusting. War is horrific. Sometimes it's necessary. Unfortunately, it is necessary sometimes, but it is a horrific thing. And I think Ridley does do a good job. That's a strength. I should have added that as a strength, but he does a good job of portraying just like how awful and taxing war can be.
Another thing, it's not really a theme, I'd say, but it's kind of a takeaway I took from the movie, and it was basically how it's kind of sad that in today's world, how religion is today. I mean, you look at the movie.
We talked about, we actually talked about this. Yep.
We talked about this right after the movie. Religion today is nowhere near as impactful as it was back then, and that was actually kind of sad to see, because like that was their main thing they focused on in their lifetime. But nowadays it's people focused on money, people focused on like getting a girlfriend and boyfriend instead of their faith with God. And I think that's one of the huge understandings that I took from this. So I guess that's kind of a good thing that religion did.
Yeah, I mean, religion used to be a way of life back then. People woke up, they said their prayers, they prayed throughout the day. They went to war because they felt that God, they were doing, it was based on, they were trying to honor God. And so the reason the Crusaders even started in the first place was because brothers and sisters in Christ were being slaughtered. And so the Pope basically said, like, you know, a lot of guys didn't want to go because they were like, man, like, I'm going to be killing people. And the Pope, you know, and the Christian leaders of that time were saying, like, no, you're defending your brother. It's honorable to do this. You know, you're honoring God by defending your brother and sister in Christ. But like, just honoring God was so important to them back then. And now, you know, we dishonor God now, and I'm guilty of this as well. Like, we dishonor God in everything, you know, a lot of things that we do, and it's just, we don't think twice about it. And so that is something that we actually talked about after the movie, was just, you know, it's kind of like an anti-religion movie, but like, it was kind of cool to see how he did tie religion into the movie. You know, maybe not how he wanted it, maybe not how he wanted it to go, but, you know, you do get a sense of just how important people's faith, whether you're Muslim or Christian, how important faith was. And we are starting to see a resurgence of faith in young people. When you take away faith and you just kind of put that away, you kind of lose your purpose, you lose your sense of meaning, everything kind of becomes meaningless. And I think that's probably why society's been so stagnant lately. But we're seeing a big resurgence in young people, especially, of going back to church, going back to, you know, faith, and that's becoming a bigger part of people's lives. And, you know, people want purpose, and religion gives them that. So that's why it's so important to be in the right one.
So I'm probably gonna ask you this question again, just because I feel like it was a good question to ask, and I feel like some people might think about this the same way I did. And then we should probably wrap up after, because we're probably pushing on time.
Yeah, I've pretty much covered most of my notes. So yeah, but one last question, and then we can wrap this up.
So I asked you after the movie as well. I asked you, do you think the reason why religion isn't as big as it is today, or as big as it was back then, is because of the wars that happened because of religion?
What did I say?
You told me that it was because of people studying science more often.
Oh, and secularism. Yeah. And secularism. So I think the Crusades do have I think they did play a role in people kind of abandoning religion because people weren't looking at them accurately. And people always want an excuse nowadays to discredit religion, discredit faith. And so anytime you can look at history, and people do this with the Old Testament all the time. They look at the Old Testament and they say, well, I can't worship a God that ordered the slaughtering of women and children. And they do the same thing with the Crusades. And so the more we can pile onto religion as what we perceive as, you know, a bad thing or something we shouldn't support or follow, that's just going to propel people to move away from that and try to find answers somewhere else. But I think there's a lot of things that play into why there's a lack of religion and religious conviction in the world today. But I think secularism for sure is the biggest reason for that. Trying to be rational. We want rational answers, which, again, you can be a Christian and be rational. Some of the greatest rational thinkers in history came out of the medieval period, actually, and they were Christian. So, you know, you don't have to throw one out to have the other. You can have them both, and it makes, you know, rationalism only makes sense in a Christian worldview. So the presuppositionalists out there that watch this show, they're going to like that, but I'm still a natural theology guy, but we can talk about that later. Anyways, yeah, so I think it's a lot of things, but thankfully we're seeing a resurgence of people being serious about religion again, so that's a good thing. But with that said, any closing thoughts on the movie? Would you recommend the movie to people?
I would recommend to first watchers, but it is not a movie that you need to see right away. Like, you can put it on your list, but it's not going to be one of those movies you need to watch instantly. So keep it on your list. If you ever happen to want to watch a movie about some history about Jerusalem, then I would go watch it. It is a very action-packed movie. It does have good acting. It's just inaccurate.
Yeah, not very historically accurate.
Thanks,
but it's
Ridley.
Yeah, it's an entertaining movie. Kind of a letdown from Ridley Scott. You know, he's given us Blade Runner, Gladiator, Alien. You said he directed one movie that I didn't even realize he directed.
Exodus, Gods and Kings.
Oh, well, that's not a very good movie.
Which
anyway,
makes no sense at all.
So we'll forget about that one. Anyways, but, you know, Ridley Scott's given us some great movies, but this one was kind of a letdown because we know what he's capable of. And a lot of his recent movies, too, have been kind of letdowns. So
Is he on the decline?
I don't know. We'll see. That remains to be seen. But with that said, thanks for tuning in. We'll have some more movie reviews coming up. We're tossing some around now. We're not sure what exactly the next one's going to be, but we'll let you know. If you guys like the trailer for for this episode, we might do some more of those because they're fun to make.
For sure.
But yeah, if you like this, if you disagree with us about anything about the movie, comment. You can find us on Rumble, YouTube, X, Instagram, but really X and YouTube are kind of where we have the most people. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.